Hello everyone, my name is Nikit Lodhi. I'm the product manager for Infor's governance risk and compliance solution. In this video, I'm going to be talking about a cool feature that is available in Infor GRC known as emergency access management. Even the best run environments and processes encounter emergencies, and such situations require a fast, agile response to put out these fires that can arise anywhere in your organization. Emergency access is one such feature that is available as a feature directly, or sometimes it is offered as a part of privileged access management feature. This feature will allow you to address a situation where some steps need to be performed in order to restore business critical service or maintain the continuity of your business. Emergency access is also sometimes known as elevated access. So let's take a look at one of the use case for emergency access. So what we are looking at currently is a typical procure to pay process, and you have different functions, and if you have a GRC solution, then you'll ensure that all these functions have segregation of duty, and you are ensuring that no single person is empowered to perform conflicting functions. So in this business process, let's focus on just two parts. One is where the purchase orders are created, and the second one where the purchase orders are approved. So when we look at these two functions, you have a procurement officer who is responsible for submitting the purchase orders, and then those purchase orders are sent out to the procurement manager who is responsible for approving these purchase orders. So this is a typical scenario, and this is a typical case that will happen daily in your business organization. And one fine day, what happens is that the procurement manager is not available in the office. However, you still need to continue to submit the purchase orders as it is business critical, and that is when you need somebody to be able to approve the purchase orders. And that is where the emergency access feature will help you, where you can assign the purchase manager role on a temporary basis to the procurement officer, who can then approve these purchase orders for that day, and the business process can continue. And again, this will be a time sensitive access that will be granted, and all the actions performed by the procurement officers on that day will be audited. And that is what emergency access is all about. Now that we understand what emergency access is and how sensitive it is, we also need to understand some challenges around the emergency access management process. So, the first and a very obvious challenge that you will face with emergency access is the potential of segregation of duties that you'll be introducing by assigning the sensitive access to the individuals. And that is something that is very important to be addressed, and that is where you need to be able to provide an auditable process where you're assigning the elevated access or the firefighting roles to the individuals. So that is why auditability is very important. And basically, you should also have control over which roles can be assigned for emergency access. So basically, you cannot have all the sensitive roles in your system available to a particular individual to be assigned at the time of emergency. You should be able to scope out and only assign the roles that is relevant for that particular situation. You need control about who is getting the pre-approved access when the elevated access is granted. So it should be a person who is from the same department and who understands the criticality of the access and who can perform the critical business functions. So all that needs to be controlled, and we need a way to be able to automate this process. So that is what emergency access can provide you. Once the sensitive access is granted to the individual, you need to have accountability of all the actions that are performed by the user with the elevated access, and you don't want to grant a sensitive or a elevated access to an individual forever. You need to ensure that once the task is complete, the elevated access is revoked. Okay, now let's take a look at the emergency access feature in Infor GRC and how it helps address the challenges that we discussed and how we can meet the actual requirement of emergency access in a compliant way. So there are four steps that we can see that are involved in case of emergency access in GRC. So the first step is around the emergency access role. So you need to plan for an emergency well in advance, and that is where you have a pre-approved user whom you are granting the emergency access role, who will be able to use that role when he needs the elevated access. So for that, you can have a pre-approved user whom you are assigning the emergency access role, and then once you do the assignment, at that point you can also get a buy-in or an approval from the functional or the business teams. So you can have an approval process in place when you're assigning the emergency access role or when you're pre-approving a user, and the functional team can also approve that access for the respective individual, and that is what the approval process will help you with. Then the third step is actually around scoping. So we need to ensure that we have control over what access we are granting to the individuals. So the third step is about scoping out the roles or the accesses based on the pre-approved user. So let's say if you're approving somebody from the procurement team, then you are granting the elevated access that are relevant to the procurement team. So that is what you can define as a part of the scope using the functional area feature that is available in Infor GRC. And then the last step is the execution step. So all the approvals are in place and you have a pre-approved user with a scoped access assignment that is available. So in case of emergency, all that the pre-approved user would need to do is log into InfoGRC and then get access to the elevated roles and perform the business functions that he is supposed to, and the system will automatically revoke these accesses from the user after the configured time in Infor GRC. Okay, now that we understand the flow of emergency access, let me demonstrate this feature in Infor GRC. I have logged in into one of our test environments and I have logged in as an administrator. So I have the administrative privileges in IFS and I have the administrative privileges in Infor GRC as well. And the next step that I need to do is I need to pre-approve a particular user. So in this case, we have chosen Jack Ryan as the pre-approved user. And in order to become pre-approved, we need to assign him a Infor GRC role, which is Infor GRC emergency access role, which will allow Jack Ryan to assign the elevated access to himself. So let's say I am from the IT team and I'm not really sure if Jack Ryan is the correct individual to get the elevated access, or is it the correct thing to do to make him the pre-approved user. So what I'll do is I'll route this provision to the approval process where the team where Jack Ryan belongs will decide if he can be the pre-approved user. So it is routed to the purchase team or the requisition team, and they can take care of approving the access and deciding whether Jack Ryan can be the pre-approved user. So in this case, let's say we went through the approval process and the access was approved, and then it completes its entire workflow where we can see that it went through the approval stages, and eventually this change was completed and the role was assigned back in the target application. We can go into user management and we can confirm the same. So go and click on user management and we can look up for the user Jack, right? And when we go into security roles, we can see that the emergency access role has been assigned to Jack. All right, now I'm logged in as Jack Ryan, and it is a situation where I am the procurement officer and I need to get elevated access as a purchase manager. So what I'll do is I'll self-assign the role to myself, and for that I need to submit an emergency access request. So I go into manage provisions and there I'll submit a emergency access request. And what I need to do is I'll select data source. I can select the application and add it. So whenever I'm submitting a emergency access request, the rules that I'll get access to are always scoped by the administrator or the business owners. And based on the department that I work in, I would have the restricted access from that department only. So when I click on add, the only role that is allowed for me to be assigned is the purchasing manager, and I can select that and I can assign. And here by default, it will take the validity of this role assignment from the current date and time to 1 hour from now. So let me show you that. So the current time is 15:39 and it will automatically be valid till 4:37 p.m., which is 16:37, which is approximately 1 hour. So let me go ahead and submit this emergency access request, right? So now the access has been submitted, right? So now let me go back to my login where I'll log in back as Nikit and I can track the progress of the emergency access. So what we can do is we'll just go back and take a look at the provisions and we can see that the request of emergency access has been submitted and it is in currently pending assignment status. So the system is going to work and assign the role. So let's check the time again. So it is 15:42 and I had submitted the provision a couple of minutes back. Now, when I check the status of the provision, it says the emergency access request is pending revocation. So that means that the role has been assigned to Jack and Jack now has the elevated access and it will be valid for the next 1 hour and provision will stay in pending revocation status for the next 1 hour. So let's go into user management and confirm that Jack has got the role and we can see that the purchasing manager, which is the elevated access, is now assigned to Jack. Okay, so 1 hour is over and let's take a look at the current time. All right, so it is 16:44. So let's take a look at the status of the emergency access request. So we can see that it was in pending revocation. Let me refresh and we can see that okay, that request is completed now and it has moved to the completed status. And let's go back to user management and we can just refresh this page and see that the role has now been revoked and the user Jack Ryan no longer has elevated access and this has been automatically updated in the system. So now that the role is revoked, we can also confirm the same in audit and monitoring and we can go into audit and monitoring section and search for the audit events and look for the changes that have happened in the last 60 minutes with the security role assignment changes. So we can see if any roles were revoked for certain users and when we'll search what we can see is that a user was removed from the particular role and it is the same user which was Jack Ryan and we can see that this was automatic because the event creator is the bot that was sent out by GRC. With this, I conclude the emergency access demonstration. Thank you.